Hey Mide, it's so good to have you here. Welcome to MBA in Canada. So happy to be talking about job search strategy with you. Before we begin, I'd love to hear an introduction about yourself.
So my name is Mide. I have an undergraduate degree in urban and regional planning, and I have a master's degree in environmental sustainability. Currently also getting an MBA at the Rotman School of Management. And I think the way my career is kind of like fashioned out was right after my undergrad, I got into the financial world. So I worked in banking for a while in operations. And during that period, especially coming from Nigeria, I started to realize that I had a passion for the environment. And I think that might have stemmed from the fact that I had an undergraduate degree in the environment and I was working in business and I was kind of looking for how to use businesses to make the environment better. And that's what moved me. That's what pushed my move to come to Canada to get a master's degree in environmental sustainability. After my master's in environmental sustainability, I started to work for BMO and I was kind of working in like the change management. I had a bit of environmental solving environmental issues
Right.
involved in the process, and during that period I also started to realize that knowing that all I had was the science and the policy background of the environment, being able to actually make change, you have to know the numbers as well. You have to be able to figure out the business behind it, and that was what drove me to Rotman to get an MBA, because I believed Rotman was going to help me to understand like the give like a wholesome view to the business and all that. So that was what moved me to join Rotman. At Rotman, during the summer, I interned at Deloitte as a senior consultant. And afterwards, I also recruited for a full-time and I'm joining Amazon in the full after the program. So
Awesome.
that's my story stuff so far.
So let's dive into the first question. So when you came here, what was your job search strategy?
Coming in with the type of background that I had, it was very, I don't want to say difficult, but it was not it wasn't the usual experience that most people had had. So most people that were coming into the MBA either already knew they were going to do finance or they were going to do consulting or they were going to do something in the startup world. And I didn't have that. Because I wanted to get like a business understanding, I almost had to figure out what I wanted by myself. And the good thing about that was Rotman gave you the opportunity to go to different learning sessions where you would learn about a bunch of industries. And I remember that it was easy for me to pick consulting because it was the one place that I realized that I could actually learn about a bunch of industries and learn about businesses in different industries. And that was what moved me into consulting. Finance could have been it, but I was already coming from finance. And I didn't think finance was going to give me the understanding that I wanted. But I felt consulting was going to give me that need for understanding the business, being able to understand different industries. And that was what drove me into consulting.
That's awesome. What was your job search strategy like? Did you shortlist some firms and did you coffee chat with them, or what did you do?
So when I got into Rotman, the one thing that I very quickly learned was you had to network to get most of the consulting jobs. Networking was a very strong aspect that was required of you. The first thing I did was, of course, shortlist the firms that had consulting roles. And they're not too many, to be honest. So there were a bunch that I started to look at, and I started to network with the ones that I felt had the right fit for me. So I was also looking at firms that had like an environmental piece to them, somewhere that I felt I could join like a sustainability team. And that was what helped me to streamline the companies that I was going to network with. And after I'd gotten that, it wasn't then more of who was it I was going to have to speak to. And the truth is, you'd find a bunch of people. There are different people in different roles within these companies. And you have to start to look at who do you think is going to be interested in your story? Who do you think your story is going to help their business go forward? And then that was how I started to pick out people to network with. But the another thing that happened was sometimes you wouldn't find those people easily. So you might have to go through other people that are readily available to you to just see who else you can speak to get you to the goal that you're going to. So that also happened for certain firms. For some, it was straight to speaking to somebody that was on the sustainability team. And for others, it was, oh, you'd have to speak to somebody else that then knew somebody in the sustainability team and helped link me to those people.
That's awesome. So that's it's great to know that you use networking. And is there any cultural shocks that you faced?
So the one thing that while I was at Deloitte that I'd not faced before I joined the company was the fact that you had to actually network to get yourself staffed on projects. But it was also a way, I believe, when I spoke to people, what they said, it was a way to get you more entrepreneurial, to get you to speak to more people and to get yourself out there more. So rather than having a project given to you, rather than having you staffed on a project, the moment you get into the team or the moment you join the company, you actually have to reach out to people, to senior members of the team to see what it is they're working on, see if you're interested in it, if you have a fit, and then see if they have a space for you to join such a project. So it was surprising to me because all my life I'd never done that before. It was the first time I was doing it, and it was very surprising. I think another thing that was also a bit of a shock was the fact that they expected you to know a lot. Like you had to hit the ground running, right? Like it was, you were working on a project that you probably have never worked on before, and you're expected to ramp up very quickly on the topic and be a subject matter expert very quickly. It was also a shock because I'd learned from my previous experiences, they would give you time to learn. But this was, I guess, the consulting world where you have to be fast on your feet and learn things as fast as possible because most projects are short, right? So they need you to be very knowledgeable of the topic really quickly so that you can contribute meaningfully to the project. And that was a big surprise for me.
Right. So did the internship help you with your job strategy? I guess like it helped you figure out what you wanted and what you didn't want, because you know you made a pivot from consulting and into the tech slash operations world. Is that am I sensing that correctly?
Yes, you are. So I when you get into the MBA, one thing that I realized is because a lot of your classmates, because well, let me speak for myself, a lot of my classmates were gone in for consulting, it kind of just becomes the default thing to go for if you don't have um a good understanding of exactly where you want to go. So because maybe like half the class or a third of the class want to end up in consulting roles, it becomes very interesting and it's very, oh, let me also try it out. It was an opportunity to be like, okay, I've been there, I've done it, and I want to do something else. And that was what the internship did for me. And I'm grateful for having that. I'm grateful that Rutman gave me that opportunity, to be honest.
Awesome. That's incredible. So how did you make your move to Amazon?
So the role that Amazon had up was for operations. And because I already had an operations background when I was working back home in Nigeria, the moment I the moment I realized consulting wasn't for me, I started to network within operations because that was my second choice. I was like, okay, if I'm not going to do consulting, then I better do something I've done before and still has sustainability to it. For me, it was speaking to people that already had the knowledge of what was required. So rather than having to find out all on my own or trying to figure out what I had to do by myself, I just went and spoke to somebody that was my classmate that had already done it. And I kind of just piggybacked on her experience and fashioned out what I wanted for myself through that. So that was the way I made my move. So for Amazon, I already knew that I didn't require any networking at all. So I didn't do that. But for the banks, I did network with people within the banks to try to get into the bank.
Amazing, amazing. So that's amazing. And I'm glad things worked out with Amazon. Throughout this process, did you feel that there was any racism or any discrimination that you have faced? Or did you have something of that in your mind before coming to Rotman?
Oh yeah, I definitely sometimes thought about that. And I feel like that came from having been here for 3 years and I wasn't yet working in the role that I wanted to. And sometimes you just feel like it might have a bit of discrimination to do with it. Might.
Right.
But I had that in my mind when I was also getting into Rotman. But I
Right.
think the good thing about Rotman is you have such diverse people, and so it's very difficult for any. It might still be there, but it's difficult for you to be able to pinpoint discrimination and be like, oh, I didn't get this interview because of my skin color, because I didn't grow up in Canada. And that's because a majority of the class is from outside Canada. So it's difficult for you to say, oh, I'm only going to hire people from Canada, because the market that you're tending to is majorly outside majorly from outside Canada. So that was definitely something that I thought about. It had happened, to be honest, it had happened in my first master's about getting the job. But when I got to Rotman, I didn't have the same experience. I think the other good thing about Rotman is the fact that most of the alumni are also very diverse, just
Right.
because the class is diverse, right? So
Right.
even if you don't find somebody that is Canadian that is willing to support you or willing to take a coffee chat with you, you would find somebody else that is either Indian or some other color that
Right.
is willing to speak to you, because they've been through the experience, they've gone through the same thing you've gone through, and they want to make it easier for you, right? So it was really helpful for me, based on that, just having that vast, diverse
Network.
population around me. It was easy for me to scale through. So to be honest, I didn't see any bit of discrimination through the process.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. So moving on to the last question, what tips or advice would you have, for the viewers who are viewing this in terms of
The one thing I probably would have done differently is probably networked even before, like the moment I got like my admission, my offer for admission, I should have probably started networking at that point, because there were people that did that. And
yeah,
there are people that did that, and by the time we got into school, when I was starting to just build the foundation of networking, these
right,
people already had contacts that they were reaching out to. They had things they knew to avoid in school, or things they knew. They kind of had like it felt like they had a better footing than I did, because I was just starting to do it. They had done the networking bit before things got crazy, because it would get like it gets really intense at the beginning of the program. So they had done that before the beginning of the program. And when I was struggling to do that,
yeah,
with the intensity of the program, they already had people they were reaching out to that they had spoken to. So if there's one thing I would say, it's um if you get an offer and you know exactly what it is, even if you don't know what you want to do, just start networking before you get into the program. Speak to as many people. And a lot of people, especially Rotman grads, are always very willing to speak to you if they know you're in Rotman, or at least coming to Rotman. They're always very willing. So it's just to go to LinkedIn, make a search for Rotman or something, and look at people that are working at places that you probably want to work in after the program, and start speaking to them. What's the experience like? What was interviewing like? What courses should they take as electives and things like that? So that's very helpful. The Another thing that I always like to say is it's very easy to follow the crowd when you get into the program. And I told myself this even before I got into the program. Yet sometimes I found myself following the crowd, but it's it's better if you know exactly what you want, and you go in that line, and as much as possible not follow the crowd. The moment I got in, I knew case competitions were not for me, and it helped me, because all the times that my classmates spent on case competition, case prepping, and all that, because I knew, well, case prep I did because I wanted to do consulting, but case competitions, because I knew it wasn't something that was going to help me in landing the job I wanted, I didn't participate in it. I think I only did one, and the only one I did was for Deloitte, and it was because it was compulsory to do that for to land the job, right? To land the internship. So that was the only reason why I did it.
right,
If you feel like it's something you want to do, you want to improve your speaking abilities, or you
right,
want to improve your communication strategy, yes, do it. But if it's something that you don't see yourself needing to get to where you're going,
right.
even though the whole program is doing it, don't join them. So it's always knowing what you want to do and going after what you want to do, because the noise at the beginning of the program is a lot, and it's very easy to just go with the crowd and think to be honest, you would think it's your idea,
Right.
because it just feels like you've heard it so many times, it feels like it's coming from you.
Right.
But you just need to be able to fashion out or design what you want your experience to be and go with that flow. There are people that enjoyed doing things like KissCom. I didn't enjoy it, which is why I didn't do it. So it's all based on what you want and what you want to get out of the program.
That's amazing. Well said, Mide. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Preeti. Thanks for having me.